Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
So I wanted to start with a tiny little exercise. So I'd like everybody to close their eyes and get a little comfortable and imagine yourself standing in the middle of a room, not holding on to anything. And you're standing with your feet together, touching each other. And I know from doing this morning, when we were waiting for the service to start this morning, I kind of sway. And continually, little muscles and nerves are bringing me back to the center. Continually, I'm adjusting my center of gravity, where I'm holding, where I'm releasing. So I think that's, you can open your eyes. I think that's an example, a very gross example of equanimity. So equanimity, the seventh factor of enlightenment, brought to fruition by all the preceding factors, particularly tranquility, concentration, the gathered, concentrated mindfulness of samadhi. Equanimity is often cited as an aspect of different lists in Buddhism. Buddhism loves lists. I think it was a helpful tool for memorizing. You could say, okay, there's 4 things you've got to remember, or 10, or 6. But it's often cited as an aspect of some of the lists of precious qualities in Buddhism. In the Brahma Viharas, the 4 sublime abodes, the last sublime abode is equanimity. In the 10 paramitas of the Theravadan school, the last paramita is upekkha, or equanimity. So, and here we are with the 7 factors of enlightenment, and upekkha, or equanimity, is the 7th, the last. So the fact that it's the last seems to indicate that there's this quality of awakening is something that takes practice, is something that comes as a fruit of all the things that come before. The necessary amount of training and preparation is required. So these factors, equanimity particularly, can be seen as qualities of awakening. They can be seen as little glimpses when we experience them or when we practice them, little glimpses into what it would be like to be awakened. And like I said, there are also practices that one can focus on and use in their meditation or just use in everyday life. They build on and contain each other. So the Pali word upekkha translates roughly as to look over. So to see a wider perspective, maybe a bird's eye view, not to be too caught in one view, but to see a much wider view. It's about clarity, about the way things are, and discernment. So it sees what is obscured. Upekkha also refers to balance, can be thought of balance like we had a small taste of. So that balance, bodily balance when you're standing or walking or even sitting, involves responsive, constant mindfulness. It's not static, it's not unchanged, but it's ever changing in response to the environment. So one example of this that I know Flint liked to use was of surfing in the ocean. So you're in the ocean and you see a wave coming and you're standing upright on a board, which is stable and firm and unchanging, could be a simile for mindfulness. And you begin moving on water, which is liquid, ungraspable, not solid. You're moving in a moving, great energy, moving rapidly. You're changing every millisecond. Your body is constantly adjusting. Does your right foot go forward? Does your left foot go back? Where's your center of gravity? Do your hips shift left or right? Where are your arms? One is up, one is down. So it's a process of only constant change in response to conditions. The goal is to get to shore, remaining standing up, and enjoy the ride. Upekkha also brings to mind open-mindedness, the ability to see opinions and views, our worldview, our gestalt, as contents of the mind, and so products of experience, products of karma. Upekkha allows us to be comfortable with different worldviews without judgment, to see them more clearly. It also allows, in this way, disentanglement from our comparing mind. There is no better or no worse. There is what is happening. There's no search to find a refuge for us in measuring up to the people around us or to some ideal we have. Upekkha allows for flourishing in a rapidly changing and completely unpredictable world. Health, status, work, friends, age, loved ones can and do constantly change. Things change in an instant and continually. It's said that Upekkha helps us weather the worldly winds of praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and disrepute, and pleasure and pain. So that about covers all the different things that change can effect. Equanimity can be seen as a strong tree. It's rooted in the 7 factors in good, rich soil. It's strong and flexible. It's not rigid and brittle. It's not fixed to a particular view or idea. It's able to bend with the storms and the wind and adjust to the weather, to the sunlight, to other trees and insects. animals, people. So a near enemy of equanimity is indifference. So they differ in that with equanimity, there is feeling, there is emotion, there is compassion, but it is non-reactive. It is responsive. Equanimity is also used interchangeably in some Buddhist texts with nirvana. So it is seen as the fruition or the maturing of practice, the cooling of the fires of change. The fires being clinging and craving, the thought of if only. It's the perspective of big mind. Not only the story of me, the narrative that I'm creating about the world around me and I am the center, but life being more, a wider view. Thich Nhat Hanh has a story of how that upekkha or equanimity is contagious, how it affects the people around us. He talks about in Vietnam during the war, and there were many of what we call boat people at the time. And they left Vietnam in rickety little boats by the thousands and crossed a dangerous sea with an uncertain future. And Thich Nhat Hanh says if there was one person in the boat who had equanimity, who had composure, and was able to be stable and steady, it could mean the difference between life and death for everyone in the boat. The Udana Sutta in the Pali Canon, which speaks of in praise of equanimity. The Buddha said, "For one who clings, motion exists. But for one who does not cling, there is no motion. Where there is no motion, there is stillness. Where there is stillness, there is no craving. And thus, verily, is the end of suffering." Upekkha can be thought of like the hub of a wheel, a turning wheel. The center responds, but it remains stable and in place in relation to the rest of the wheel. One of the things that the great teacher Ajahn Chah used to use was, "It's not a sure thing." Christina Feldman, a Buddhist teacher, likes to use the phrase, "in the midst of." We are in the midst of. And with upekkha, we can finish that sentence with one of the 7 factors. In the midst of this mindfulness, in the midst of this joy, in the midst of this tranquility, we can make that choice. And we're always participants in this dance. We're always part. We're not observers only and divorced from what's happening. There's the idea of the Heisenberg theory that the act of observation, which could be thought of as applying attention or awareness, the act of observation of a particle alters the particle, making non-participatory or impartial observation impossible. We're always one of the variables, no matter how small or how large. Our being and our actions always have an effect. We're always instruments of change. Karma always happens. So I wanted to end this talk with the idea of upekkha as a mountain resting upon the earth that is steady and stable. Everything around the mountain changes. The seasons, the weather, the animals on the mountain. But the mountain remains the same, still, abiding calmly in the midst of ever-changing life. And this is upekkha. So if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to entertain those. Hey, Ellen, I can't hear you yet.
Myself, okay. I don't really have a question, but I just can't let this go without saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for that talk. It was a beautiful talk, and I would like a copy of it.
Ciao.
I mean, it's such a beautiful examination of equanimity. I just so much appreciate it. I couldn't just let this go without saying something about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So my question is, the last part that you mentioned about the mountains, the equanimity is the mountain, everything changed. But the mountain changed too, you know, with the wind,
Right.
the rain, it changed.
There is, yeah, but there's something that remains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a simile can only take you so far.
But yeah, okay, yeah. It's the earth, even though it's changing, the mountain is.
I think you're right. I mean, the mountain is eroding.
Yeah.
The water is falling on the mountain, and so it's washing things away. So it's gradually changing the mountain. I think that's true. But I don't know how it fits into my little schema.
Yeah.
I really liked the suggestion of Christina Feldman about in the midst of. I just like that phrase so much. When I came across it, it really struck me that that is where we practice equanimity. This is where we have the chance to be balanced, not to be static, not to be rigid, but to continually be taking in information and responding. An appropriate response.
It's the gap.
The gap.
Yeah.
The gap. Say more about that.
Oh, the gap between.
Gonna talk
So I was saying that it's like the gap. We talk about the gap between responding automatically and pausing. You know, it's the gap between the scratch, moving. It's just the gap that we create in our behavior of pausing before we speak.
Right.
Yeah, it's all, we talk about the gap a lot, mind the gap.
Or even the Dharma gate, we can choose or not choose. It's that pause where you can go through or.
Or not, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The difference between stillness and motion. And I guess I would say automatic motion, reactive motion, which we have in our bodies, the reactive motion. But can we, like Laurie says, remain still, take some breaths, and respond, consider, and respond. Okay. Well, I think we get to move on to the next thing, whatever it is. What are we doing next, Adam?
Just zazen.
Just zazen. Well, we'll do just zazen. Yeah, we'll just sit. So, thank you very much.
Okay. Welcome back. This is the officially last talk we have in this series. So, what I'd like to do is kind of return to the very beginning. I don't want to go over everything, of course, but I want to think about some of the questions that I posed at the very beginning. So, what are the 7 factors of enlightenment? So everybody should know that by now. And why are they important to study, and how do they help with our practice, and how might they improve our lives? So I thought I'd just try to bring that together somehow. So let's just go over the 7 factors quickly, more or less. So the first one was mindfulness. And mindfulness being the practice of bringing our awareness to one object or a series of objects to create clarity of mind and greater comprehension. So one of the main focuses of this practice that we did was the mindfulness of the breath, right? With the anapanasati. We used it mindfulness in a lot of different ways as we went along, and mindfulness can be used in many different ways. But we started out with the anapanasati. And so through that, we were focusing on the breath and then doing mindfulness of the body, of feeling, of the mind, and then of phenomena. And so through that practice, we saw, or we discussed, how over time, these factors, you can cultivate them and develop them by doing this meditation and by doing other things as well. But that's part of the function of this meditation, of the anapanasati. And so that's the first step, is developing mindfulness and mindfulness of the breath. And that will lead to all these different factors over time. And we're talking about how mindfulness, you start getting more clarity, you're focusing on something, and as a consequence of focusing on the teachings, for example, you come to a point and you say, but what about something? What about what the Buddha said this? I'm not so sure about that. So then you start questioning. And as you start to question, you gain energy. You guys are there. And so you have a little energy to spur you on, to continue the practice from day to day, or sitting from week to week or whatever. And you start reading and you start thinking about it, thinking about what we're learning. And then over time, after doing that for a while, what happens is from all this curiosity, and it's like taking a new class, you get really excited about the subject, and then you get more energy and you want to know more. And so it happens with these factors. And so through investigation, we do get more energy, and the energy to keep going and want to practice. And over time, that energy evolves. That energy evolves into joy. And with joy, which is really great, joy has the effect on your mind. These are all mind states we're talking about, mental qualities. And so in the section of joy, you not only have the body, you can feel in the body your joy. And it's also a mental quality that you have. So with joy, we have joy. And then as we develop it and really practice with it a while, you begin to get a little restful with it. A little calmness sets in. This calmness sets in, which turns into tranquility, this tranquility. And that leads us to the next step, right? And then with tranquility, so we went through the energizing factors, which were investigation, energy, effort, and joy. And then from the joy, we go to the calmness, which leads into tranquility. And then subsequently, we go on to concentration. Concentration, and a deep concentration, the one-pointed concentration, the samadhi that Dogen talks about, very deep concentration. And then over time, in cultivating that leads to this other thing, equanimity, this equipoise, more of that standing, being able to stand in the middle and see. Standing, as Anne was saying, standing from the top of the mountain and being able to see both sides. So that was kind of the meditative side of it. And the other side of it was what Anne mentioned the other day is we already have these qualities. We have them. And so we're developing them, we're cultivating them, and we're becoming aware of them. We're not even aware that, gee whiz, I got joy. Who'd have thought? That this is a thing. I mean, it's a thing in meditation and it's important. So it's good to know that we already have this. We already have these things. And we can use them in all different ways, besides just improving our meditation and so forth. We can use them with the hindrances. When we have difficulty with desire, we use mindfulness. With ill will, we use metta, which doesn't go in this list, but anyway, metta helps with ill will and anger. We have restlessness and worry, or maybe I should go over dullness and drowsiness first. And we use the 3 energy factors. So energy itself, joy, and investigation, we use all 3 of those to counter drowsiness and dullness. And then with the restless and worry, we work with the quieting, the calming aspect. So if you have a personality of being really hyper, such as myself, you aim right for that tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And those who are kind of chill, they got to focus on the energy and the joy and the investigation. And then the last one is doubt, and working on doubt in different ways. That's on a different page for right now. So anyway, so now we know that we have these qualities and we can also cultivate them greater, and we can use them in different ways. And then, how does this information help us in our life? Well, certainly it can calm the ups and downs, just in general, just have a calming effect over time. We can also use it for the development of compassion. Through mindfulness, we develop compassion. We slow things down with mindfulness and apply compassion. And we can work with ourselves as well as others with compassion. We have a greater capacity, especially through this investigation, to see things, well, actually through the whole list, but to see things as they really are. We really begin to see how interconnected we are with each other and with everything, that all life is happening all around it, and we're a part of that. And we're affecting each other all the time. So when we do something that's detrimental, we can say, no big deal. But it is a big deal because it impacts others automatically. It impacts because you put it out in the world. And whether it's a mind state or an action or some words, it makes a difference. And then we talked a little bit about detachment, and how detachment is an important concept from the standpoint we know that much of our suffering comes from our attachment to things. We have things that we want. Nothing wrong with wanting things, but to think that we're actually going to have it, we have to be able to accept that we don't instead of making a fuss, right? So we have to detach from some of these wants and wanting things to be a certain way, or wanting things to be secure, or wanting things to be much of anything. You have to really be careful with not holding on to that and then demanding it be that way. That's the major cause of our suffering. Also through all this, too, through working with these factors of enlightenment, there's a certain releasing, just natural releasing over doing these practices of egocentric views, of our egocentric views, because we start to see them. Again, through investigation, we say, what was I thinking there? Thought I had a great idea, but it actually didn't work out for other people. They were really hacked off. So this is the interconnection that we have and the awareness that we need to have around that. So with our understanding also that all things are impermanent, we know, we become aware of that readily, easily, and it's all quickly passing by. We realize that in fact there is dukkha, there is dissatisfaction, really, and suffering in this world. Certainly old age, sickness, and death is a primary cause, but those are the things we can't do anything about. Although we learned when we talked about joy that even in death, when other people die, we can find joy in being with other people and thinking about that person. And we can, just the coming together can, in a joyful way, makes a difference. And we know that we have the tools of the Buddha to reduce the suffering in the world around us. All the ones that we talked about here. And then we also have this capacity for recollection, to remember who we are, to remember how it feels to be equanimous, and to, because we have that capacity, find it in ourselves, to find the joy in ourselves, the equanimity. And lastly, although we're all connected in life, and it's all spinning and twirling around, and it's all interconnected, and yet it can seem so overwhelming. And yet we come here and we sit on the cushion, we sit in Zazen, we take the Buddha's seat, and we accept that we are the Buddha when we take the Buddha's seat. We are the Buddha. And the Buddha is us. We are here doing what he does, attempting to do what he has done and what his teachings. And so we have that, despite or in addition to the rest of life. I mean, the rest of life is it's all doing its own thing, without our control. And yet we know that it's okay, it's the way it is. And we have these tools in which to be able to realize that and be okay with it and be able to help others and be with others. It's probably one of the primary things. So that's kind of what I got out of this thing. How about you guys? Any comments over the course of our time together? Let's see on the screen.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you for the summation. And I also appreciated. I appreciate what you said, how you tied that together. I also very much appreciated the guided meditations that you and Anne provided, and the way in which those were handled, and the way that they allowed me to feel without a sense of effort, or so much of a sense of effort, to feel like I had access to each of those qualities one by one. And that's really what emerged for me as the most important thing, that those qualities are available, and they emerge naturally if they have space. And I'm having trouble putting it into words, but I think that the guided meditations gave me that space for these things to emerge, So thank you for those.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Joel. And I think so oftentimes if something's going on and we want some sort of answer to it, or just we want to feel tranquil, and so we start trying to figure things out, thinking that that's the answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So often it's a matter of stepping back. It's the opposite, stepping back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, I kind of have a confession to make on this. During this intensive, there was something that was really up for me. There's a lot of stuff that was going on right prior to this intensive, and I realized somewhere in the middle of the intensive that I was having a really hard time connecting, and it was precisely because I wasn't touching into it, you know what I mean, and really feeling what I was feeling, and so it's a lot about that. I mean, when we have our situations and the things that come up, it's so much about our own awareness, and then turning toward it, as we always hear, right? And being able to let it be, as opposed to trying to keep it away because it's painful or what have you. And so yeah, it's a really good lesson, because then you get really messed up if you're trying to push it away. It doesn't help. And then it kind of blocks up the whole system. So yeah, so I think that this is somehow, in doing all this, it's really clear that, I think I've already knew that you need to turn toward things, but sometimes one is not willing to, to do that. Some people are more stubborn than others, I guess. But anyway, so that's really, really important. Through this meditation, we can much more readily open to it than certainly all this trying to figure it out. that doesn't work at all. So anyway, thank you, Joel. Oh, Ellen, hi.
Oh gosh, Laurie. Thanks to you and Anne for these talks and this intensive. And I don't know, I think I'm still processing. I'm not, it's going to be a little difficult to put into words, but I did find this useful, especially like, well, that these enlightenment factors, they are mental qualities, and they're what we bring when we sit and in our life. But I mean, they're the same thing, you know, when we sit in our life. And I found it useful in real specific ways. Of course, mindfulness comes first. But like when my back, I'm dealing with posture and pain a lot lately. And so when my back would start to tighten up, like inquiry would set in. Like, oh, looky there. And with that inquiry came some kind of friendliness, sort of like, hello there. What are you about? What is this about? And I would never really like figure out what it's about, but it was like my back liked me paying attention to it like that. It like, and that specific way, like I know to turn towards it and all of that, but in this very open, friendly kind of a way. And then all of those things begin. Then there's all of those things, they just domino. You're right. I mean, they're already what we have and are, and but it really helps to just take a systematic look at them like this. So thank you so much for all of that.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think that's what's so good about this is that in studying them just as a meditation, I mean, that's fine, but really when you take them in and are actually doing them, you know, or seeing them arise or seeing that you have the capacity anyway, that you're kind of doing that anyway, right? I mean, as far as the investigation, we are always wondering, why are you saying that right now? Or why are you thinking that? Or why is that, you know, at least I do, always wondering what the heck's going on. So yeah, it's been useful in this particular time period, really looking at that. So thank you so much, Ellen.
Hi.
Bye.
Just also very grateful to all you shared and Ellen, like really, and just really appreciating how this is so ordered, and it gives this map just really helped me to have this sense of the map and how each one brings the other, so we can, you know, really bring like the medicines we need to follow what is supportive, the cultivation of these qualities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Hi. Yeah, I feel like what everybody else has said. This is an incredible week, and you all, everybody in the Zindo there, and Nellie the monitor, and Joel, who's also monitored, have done such a great job of holding the form for us. And I got to. Laurie sort of gave me a hint about this a few seconds ago when you said you had a confession to make, and the word confession, as a recovering Catholic, the word confession. Well, and I'm somewhere in the middle of all this, or I wrote a note to Nellie, she knows about this, but somewhere in the middle of all this today, I think I missed lunch and maybe one of the Zazins. I had to go to a funeral. This person had died after I registered, so it's not like I was skipping out. I had to go to the funeral. I have known him for many years, many decades, so I felt like having not stepped foot in the Catholic Church in several years, and lightning bolts were striking me as I got out of the car. And not really, it's sunny here today, but that's what we always like to say, lightning bolts. I went and I got to use all of these. I'm looking at the list you just gave us. I felt like mindfulness for sure, because it was a mass. So right in the middle of a Buddhist retreat, I went to a Catholic mass. Mindfulness for sure. Lots of ritual, by the way. So the ritual, Catholics never have trouble with Buddhist rituals, and it's nothing. Investigation, energy. I put so much energy into going like this. No, during this whole mass, I use so much energy looking around people. Who are you and what are? But somehow there was joy. There was joy in the whole thing. I saw the woman's daughters. I saw their families, and in the midst of, as Anne said before, she was quoting somebody, Christina Feldman. In the midst of, that's what we are. We're in the midst of. I was in the midst of this thing. Tranquility and concentration, samadhi, and especially the fruit, as Anne called it, the fruit of this whole thing is equanimity. And I felt it somehow. I can't really describe it, but I felt it. And by the time the whole thing was over and I was talking to people outside, it was just an amazing feeling that I had to stop at the grocery store on the way home and pick up a couple of items. And I never buy flowers, but look, I bought flowers. It's a sad little bunch, but I bought, and I don't know, there's something about the whole thing. I can't put words to it. Like Ellen said, I'm still processing. But thank you. It's just been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, I want to share something. First, I would like to appreciate everybody, especially both of you, for the teachings and the exercise activity. And I really see that's what we practice, no? Every day when we sit in the cushion. So when we were doing the period of work practice, it was just like Laurie started cleaning, and everybody it was just smooth, It was nothing, it was just, I can feel the energy, it was just moving like very peaceful, very smooth, very, everybody bowing, like doing this, and it's just that, and I wasn't putting the words, but now they're talking, start saying, wow, it's all we were practicing all that. And the equanimity that we were all doing that together. And not because of us. I was feeling like it's not doing this because me. It's what we do, no? Not for no to us. All the Bodhisattva vow. Oh. That's part of the Bodhisattva vow. Yeah. We don't do this for my own personal growing. And that's what I feel when I'm here in the sendo. Or when I am online. It's for everybody. It's this expansive, like equanimity is just around. Like, remember when Peg was teaching those four
Bind of oats.
Brahma Vihara.
You know, is that it just comes and spreads, just spreads like, it's not doing, or it's not something that I'm trying to do it, it's just happening. It just happened, so really thank you so much for that. You and everybody was here. And I say everybody. Everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think it's really interesting because there is a certain backstory to all of this, what was going on in here, where the audio was just difficult, and there were just a lot of little things that were just like, what? Another thing. And yet it didn't make any difference, ultimately. At the moment it was like, what? And then it rest into that. It's delightful. Well, still have 20 minutes. I feel like we've really jumped ahead.
Yeah, we kind of did our gratitude. Yeah.
Yeah.